Hello, everyone. Uh, my name is Eric White. I'm the Assistant Director for Career Development in the College of Engineering at Oregon State University. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about grad student careers. More specifically, the two areas we want to focus on today are making connections and polishing your CV in order to get hired. So let's go ahead and get started. So thinking about making connections, what's the number one thing you need to do in terms of make connections is network, all about network. And the best time to start networking is right away. So I completely understand that it can be really easy to have your head down in your research and be focused on that, focused on your teaching, if that's part of what you're doing as a grad student, getting that thesis or dissertation ready to go. You've got to try and publish a couple articles, maybe. You need to think about conferences, but it's also important to be thinking about your career and planning for making wise career moves at the end of your graduate program. So now's the time to lay the groundwork for getting hired. And the way to do that is to meet everyone you can. So when you're going to academic conferences or industry meetings, take advantage of every social interaction opportunity. Lunches, happy hours, collect business cards, have your CV ready to give other people. That's kind of off-campus focus. Also, get to know your professors, know your academic advisors, your fellow grad students, talk with them about who they know in their industry of interest, see if there are some introductions they can make to get you in contact with someone they know who can help you learn more about moving on after you complete your graduate degree. Go to career fairs, go to on-campus employer talks. When somebody comes to speak, stick around afterwards and meet that individual speaker. And then the key thing, follow up afterwards, right? So the way to find out about career fairs and on-campus employer talks, we list all that stuff in Handshake. So definitely keep an eye on your Handshake account. And the final thing that you can do to get the connection ball rolling is to just contact companies or other organizations that you're interested in and set up informational interviews. It's not really a situation where you're hunting for a job in that moment. You're just getting to know more about that company, about their organization, and meet some individuals inside that organization that maybe down the road you can go back to and ask for more concrete, specific suggestions or advice once you're more actively hunting for that full-time job. So when you're making connections, you want to use your elevator pitch to tell your story, right? Now, of course, you're fascinated by, absolutely immersed in the details of your research that you're doing as a graduate student. But the point of contacting someone and making kind of an elevator pitch, don't get stuck in the technical details. If they want to know all the technical details of the awesome research you're doing, they will definitely ask. But instead, think about it as a narrative, right? You're telling your story. This is who I am. These are the things that I care about. And these are the things that I have done or I can do that are relevant to you, the potential employer, right? Now, my suggestion is have two different versions of explanation for your research, right? One version that is pretty technical for sharing with someone else who shares your specific technical background, and then a second explanation of your research for a more general audience. Oftentimes, recruiters or hiring managers might not share the same technical expertise that you are in the process of developing as a graduate student. So they may not be equipped to understand your very targeted professional vocabulary and that sort of thing. So be ready to describe your research and tell your story to a fellow professional in your area of expertise and to a more general audience, right? So we've got a little example script here. This is pretty broad, right? So the person gives a little bit of information about the general field of their research. They talk about who they are. I'm passionate about design because I love creating these experiences for people of all backgrounds. And they talk about what they want. I'm looking for opportunities with companies that share this vision, right? So she's offering to share something with another organization. So that's a good example of just sort of encapsulating the basic details into a quick, cohesive narrative. Okay, one of the ways that people make a lot of job-focused connections is at career fairs. Now, and the way you do this here on campus is to pre-register for these career fairs on Handshake. Again, that's going to be an important tool for everyone. Now, in terms of spring 2020, we are not having any career fairs on campus. This is not going to be a big surprise to anyone. We're investigating currently opportunities for doing some online opportunities and tools to get employers and prospective employees in touch with each other. So keep an eye on Handshake for announcements on how that's going to play out. In any case, whatever form those eventually take, you should be able to pre-research employers who list MS or PhD required or preferred in their position descriptions. So Handshake's a tool for that. Once you're in touch with these folks, focus on having good conversations, useful conversations where you're exchanging information about yourself, your interests, your story, and the company's story, the company's interests and needs, and how those two things can match up. The other key thing is you have to follow up afterwards, right? The recruiter's going to be talking to a lot of folks, so you need to think of it as your role to initiate that contact afterwards, that follow-up contact. Whether online or in person, always have a short version of your resume, which 2 pages max if you're graduating with a PhD. If you're just wrapping up a master's and came straight to that program from your bachelor's, you might even get away with just a 1-page resume, right? It's just a snapshot. And then have your longer CV, right? So ask the employer, what's best for you? Would you like my resume? Would you like my more comprehensive CV? And be prepared to hand off either or both of those, either in person or, via PDFs if it's an online interaction. Now, keep in mind that not all recruiters are highly trained up on PhD level opportunities, right? For positions with that degree of specificity required, it may be that the recruiter will end up trying to get you in contact with somebody else at the company to talk about those things, right? If the recruiter is not quite the right person to get into that kind of detail. Another thing to keep in mind is that for some contexts, maybe the thing to do is not to say, I'm completing a PhD, I'm defending in 6 weeks. Maybe the thing to do is focus on your skill set and talk about how your skill set matches with the company's position, and not focus so much on the formal academic credentials, focus on the actual things that you know how to do. The reality is that most career fair contexts are targeted for the students completing undergrad degrees. And so for students completing a PhD, I would suggest thinking of career fair not as kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet, like it might appear to be for undergrad students. Think of career fairs more as a treasure hunt for PhDs. Doesn't mean it's not worth engaging with, but it's important to go in with a little different mindset. So some tools that you can use in terms of exploring different possible careers as a master's or PhD student. Focus 2, this is you can connect with this tool on our career.oregonstate.edu website. Sort of an inventory tool, but also it actually allows you to access data based on Bureau of Labor Statistics information. So that's good. There's also, for those folks in science fields, there's Science Careers site, similar to Focus 2, but it's geared towards, very specifically towards the sciences. So for example, this is kind of a snapshot of the kind of first step information that Science Careers assessments spit out for you. So, and you can kind of, this is, like I said, this is kind of the first step, and you can kind of click through and follow into more depth and detail in different areas. Important thing to keep in mind, this Science Careers tool is not to say that these are the only career paths available to people with doctorates who've identified certain skill areas. It's just kind of a how well things match, but this is not at all an exclusive sort of thing. So just to give you some ideas about where you might start looking. All right, so also think about making connections. In the modern world, job search sites are a useful tool. Our primary tool that we would recommend in this context is Handshake, right? OSU's, this is our sort of formal official university career platform. A lot of employers engage with Handshake. There are a lot of graduate level jobs. One of the real advantages to working through Handshake is that companies who are listing things on OSU's Handshake site, by doing so, are showing they are very interested in hiring OSU graduates, right? If they weren't looking for OSU graduates, they wouldn't be on our site, on our Handshake site. So you know that there's a level of interest there, that there's a respect for your background and the work that you're doing here on campus. It's a little bit different from some of the huge job boards that are, nationwide or international in nature, where there's not necessarily that sort of pre-considered interest in certain background and skill set. So anyway, for what it's worth, think about that. usajobs.gov, this is all federal jobs. Chronicle Vitae is focused more on academic opportunities and positions. Also, it's always a good idea to consider industry association job boards. Whatever industry you're interested in, there will be some kind of professional association, and that professional association will almost inevitably have some kind of job hunting resource or tool or referral system, something, right? And thinking about moving into industry, there's a couple other websites here where you can get some interesting information. Cheeky Scientist and Jobs on Toast. Just some places to poke around and find some additional resources. Yeah. So thinking about transitioning from making connections to polishing your CV. So the first question, what do we want to do? Do we want to do a CV or a resume? So the idea, the contrast, I guess, the CV should be a full history of your academic career and background. So teaching, research, publication, for an early career academic, somewhere between 2 and 7 pages, and most often CVs are the appropriate way to go for academic positions, especially, but also medical positions, research positions outside of academia, teaching opportunities. CV is the way to go. Now, resume is not intended to be comprehensive. It's just a quick summary snapshot of your skills. So a brief targeted list of experience and achievements, customized to the position you're applying for, by the way. Early career professionals, 2 pages maximum. Often 1 will do the trick. And these are geared towards most private industry positions, and sometimes nonprofits are looking for this type of information. A little side note here, government jobs and government resumes are kind of a category all their own, right? So if you're interested in U.S. government jobs, look for that USA Jobs website, resources, webinars, crop up on there every so often. And actually, talks from OSU's Career Development Center on applying to federal jobs kind of rotate around in our training rotation every so often. So keep an eye through Handshake for any of those sessions. Again, spring 2020, all of our sessions will be online rather than in person. You can also contact this Career Development Center, careers.oregonstate.edu, anytime if you have questions about applying for government jobs, and we'll be happy to help you out. So some tips for polishing up your CV. Prioritize the most important info at the top, right? You don't want to bury the key detail that's going to get you that job somewhere on page 6, right? Most important stuff up top. Tailor your CV to the specific position you're applying for. So my suggestion would be to have kind of like a master template for your CV. And then depending on the specifics of the position description that you're applying for, you might add some details that aren't that big a deal in other contexts, take off some stuff that's not relevant, but customize and focus on that specific opportunity. Be sure to follow the format for your particular industry. Each industry kind of has its own set of conventions, kind of like publishing. Each field, and within each field, each journal kind of has its own format and style and the way they like to do things. So figure out what that looks like for your professional field and then follow those conventions. And if you're not sure about that, you could talk with a professor, you could do a little research in professional associations again, or you can get in touch with the Career Development Center and we'll help you figure it out. Once you've got your journal format figured out, make sure that your sort of individual format is clean and simple, right? Simple format, easy to navigate, easy for humans to read, and be consistent, right? Kind of show off your organizational skills, not the time to sort of throw kind of a hodgepodge of information all sort of dumped in together, right? So clean, structured, organized. Get feedback from more than one person, fellow grad students, professors, if you have a tight relationship with some of those, career development folks are happy to take a look at it, right? And then, of course, proofread, copy edit, make sure you don't have any errors that have snuck in there somewhere. Okay, when you're polishing your CV, so what should you include on your CV? A lot of information. So remember, this is supposed to be a comprehensive look at your academic career. So think about all the different things that might be encompassed by that. Not just your degrees, your formal degrees, but also if you have some sort of professional training or skills certificates or licenses that you've acquired in the course of your career. Any kind of academic awards you want to have on there, presentations, posters, conferences, all that kind of stuff. Service activities are really important to show. Any affiliations or memberships that you have. Specifically targeted technical skills or foreign language skills are quite valuable. And don't forget to include things that are not necessarily academically centered. So if you're doing some kind of volunteer work, it might have nothing to do with your field of research, but it tells a lot of your story. It helps people understand who you are and what's important to you. And those things matter in the job hunt. So include all kinds of stuff. As a general rule of thumb, if you're not sure to include something or not, it seems kind of peripheral. If you're working on a CV, toss it in there. If you're working on a resume, maybe leave it out. So again, to kind of go back in a little more detail with this idea of formatting, make sure you've got bold print, larger font size for your name at the top, right? You want to make sure reviewers are very clear on who they're reviewing at any given point in time. Use horizontal lines or header groups or different bullet points to kind of break things up. White space is your friend here, right? So you don't want your CV to look like a giant block of text in a badly edited textbook, right? You want to have plenty of white space there so that it's easy for the eye to understand your organizational structure, how the hierarchy of your information is organized, and to kind of pick out key terms without having to slog through a bunch of dense, small text. So one thing it's easy to overlook when you're listing your engagement in collaborative presentations or publications, make sure your name is in bold so that bold print in that citation matches the bold name at the top of the page. And of course, list your information in reverse chronological order. Whatever system of organization you're using, periods or italics or different bullet styles, different headers, just be consistent with yourself through the whole thing, right? Page numbers and last name are typically used as a footer, right? Anytime you get beyond like one page, you want to make it difficult for people to mix up things and lose track of who they're reading about. So just slap a last name and page numbers on your footer for your CV. So this is an example of particular kind of formatting style. Sort of category headings are bold and all caps. And then that categories, the beginning of the category's got that horizontal line. Each item in that category, the general item is bold with the location and department. Then the role being played is italicized, and then bullet points to sort of illustrate the important and relevant activities or skills within that role. So anyway, this is kind of an example of what you want to look at. And so headers can be really powerful. The thing is, each person who's looking at your CV may be hunting for something particular to their need. So you can use headers to make it easy for people to find different kinds of information, right? So rather than flipping through, 2 pages of hierarchical, paragraphs, and some of them are about supervision experience, and some of them are about teaching experience, and some of them are about presentations, group stuff into relevant topical areas, right? So it's easy for people to find the specific details that are important to them, right? Because remember, this is how you're showing that you can do something for them. That's the name of the game here, right? So that is kind of our quick summary of making connections and polishing up your CV in order to get to that ultimate goal of being hired. So where can you get more career assistance? The Career Development Center. That's what we're here for. So, and again, spring term 2020, best way to do that is online. So career.oregonstate.edu, we've got a lot of different tools. You can utilize online tools. Resume samples to kind of compare what you're working on to some samples for your particular field. There's a comprehensive career guide with a tremendous amount of information, suggestions, resources. We do have drop-in opportunities, so you can connect with a career assistant and get some real-time feedback on your resume or your CV. Generally speaking, CUR is a good place to go, but again, spring term 2020, we're doing all of this online. So career.oregonstate.edu, there's a link there where you can click through to do a virtual drop-in to using Zoom, as so many things will in spring 2020. But yeah, it's designed to be a real-time interaction, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., as long as the term is in session. We also do have specific career advisors assigned to different colleges on campus. So you can make appointments with those folks through Handshake. There is an opportunity to kind of book yourself an appointment and to have a virtual interaction in real time. Each of those advisors has specific sets of advising hours for specific colleges. So, and the schedule you can find also on career.oregonstate.edu at the more specific URL shown here. So that's a little bit of information to help you get rolling in terms of thinking about making connections while you're still working on your graduate degree and getting your CV in shape and ready to use as you move towards degree completion and job hunting. I hope this has been helpful for you, and keep in mind for suggestions and feedback and information specific to your individual situation, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Career Center, Career Development Centers, and we will be delighted to help you out. So good luck with everything. Hope your spring term goes well, and stay safe out there. And best of luck in your job search. All right. Thank you very much.